Hey everybody, what's up? Okay, as part of our new weekly Justin Bieber initiative to bring more traffic into Nettuts, today we're going to be focusing on Twitter and how to create an update panel of sorts to bring in all of the great Justin Bieber's tweets. Let's get started. I've created a new project and just have a new index.html file. You've seen this before. We're importing jQuery and we have opening script tags. So the first step is to create our skin, our layout. So we're not going to do very much here at all. I'm just going to create within an h2 tag, latest Biebster tweets. And then we're going to create an unordered list. So this is just going to be, you know what, truthfully, maybe we should be using a server-side language for this, but we're having fun and we're going to use JavaScript for it. Okay, so it'll be dependent upon JavaScript. Who cares? That's fine for now. You can always create a fallback later. Okay, so we have our layout. So now let's get started. And of course, first thing, we want to limit the total number of global variables. So function will wrap everything. Okay, and call it. So this is called self-invoking anonymous function. If we want, we can pass jQuery to it. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to worry about it for now. And we're going to make this all a big object. So we'll call it update panel. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is, you'll see with this, the standard thing is you'll have your init method, and this is the function that kind of gets the ball rolling, so to speak. So we'll call it init. It's going to be equal to a function. Now the idea is that when they call it, they'll do something like update panel .init, and then they'll pass in their object. So we could accept a handful. We could do like, they could set the interval of how often they want it to update. So maybe something like every 5 seconds. And then they could set the number of tweets to show, something like that. So that's basically how it will work. And then this data will be represented by options. However, I do want to set some defaults. So the way we can do this is take advantage of jQuery.extend. It's very helpful. So I could do options equals jQuery.extend. And I want to extend my default parameters with whatever they pass in. Okay? So whatever they pass in will override anything that I have here. So my defaults are going to be the interval, and that will be a 5-second interval. You know what? Maybe the default should be 10,000. It doesn't matter. Anyhow, the number, default to 3, and then that's fine for now. We'll do something kind of fun later, but we'll keep it like that for now. Okay, so now we're saying options equals take whatever I have here, these defaults, and override them. So anything that's the same that the users passed in, use their parameters instead of mine. If they didn't pass, just use what I have here. However, there's one more problem here, is options. This is exclusive to this init function. So as soon as I create a new function, options will not be available to it. So I want to make sure I expose it to the update panel object. So I can do that by setting this.options. So now any of these new methods will have access to this.options. Okay? So yeah, jQuery.extend, very helpful. The next thing I want to do here is I need to change one thing here. Now when they call this, they're going to need to pass in a URL, and this is going to be a URL to the search param. So for instance, if we go to search.twitter.com, we can search for something by doing search.format, so search.xml or search.json, and then you search for your query. So the query is going to be Bieber. And that's going to, that's not right, search.twitter.com/search.json, query equals Bieber. And that's going to return a JSON feed. So that's what we need here. So they'd copy that, and then they would paste that into their URL, like so. However, the only problem is sometimes you need to pass in a callback in order to use something like a JSON. So in those cases, if you want to be careful, you could do something like this.options.url, because remember, now that we've exposed it to the update panel object, we can access URL by doing this.options.property_name URL. And if we want to do this, you might be able to get away without doing it. It just really depends on the circumstance. But if you want, you can append and callback equals question mark for jQuery. Okay, next I need to call a method, and this method's entire responsibility is to in this case, every 5 seconds, update this UL with the new tweets that have come in that time span. So we could put it all in one method, but let's separate it out so that it's only in charge of that little bit of code. And we'll call it updater. And I do want to pass in the element that we're updating. So we can do this.options.element. But technically, you really don't even need to do that at all because it's exposed to this global object, not global, but the update panel object. We can just access it that way. All right, so that looks good for now. Next, let's do our updater method, and that's equal to a function. Okay, the first thing I want to do here is just loop, and every 5 seconds just update, update, update. So you could use set interval, but you might have heard set interval is kind of not the best thing to use because it'll just keep running over and over, no matter what if you set it to run every second, but the code within it takes 2 seconds to run. It's just going to run, and it's going to pile up and pile up and pile up. Set timeout does not do that, so we're going to find a way to use set timeout. So the way to make set timeout just run over and over, like set interval, is to place it within a function and then continue to call it recursively. So we'll do function, and I'm going to give this a named. It's going to be a named function. Update box, that's fine. Something like that. That should be fine. Okay, so within here, I'm going to create set timeout. It's going to run a function. And we want to, how often do we want it to run? How often do we want it to run? Every 5,000 milliseconds. So we can access that by doing, you would think we could do this.options.interval, but you can't. And the reason is because within the context of set timeout, this refers to the global window object. So if you've ever seen things like var that equals this, that's what it's about. It's retaining the location of this. In this case, we'll just refer to it manually, update panel. So that is equal to 5 seconds. All right, within here, I'm just going to call a function, and we'll call it updated, something like that. So the updated function will update the code. And then as soon as that's complete, we're going to call it again, update box. So this calls itself recursively. So every 5 seconds, it calls this function, that'll update it, and then it calls itself again, and it runs again. So truthfully, you could get away with something like arguments.callee, but the problem with that is it's been deprecated in ECMAScript. So in this case, just give it a named function, and it should be actually a little bit quicker too. So that looks good. So the next step is to go ahead and create that updated function. But one more thing to think about though is if we keep it just like this, we aren't going to see any code until the timeout runs. Because remember, set timeout means in 5 seconds, then run this code. But I want to show the tweets immediately. So let's get the ball rolling. And in that case, I'll just call update it immediately. Okay, so next function, let's go ahead and create it. So this code, all we want to do is just make an AJAX call. So jQuery, you could do get JSON, something like that. You could do get jQuery.get. We'll do AJAX. Scroll down just a little bit. And we need to pass in some parameters here. So the first one is what type is it? Post, get, it's going to be get. The next one is the URL, and we've saved that. So that's update panel.options.url. And that's going to refer to this path that we have right here. Okay. Next, we need the data type. We know that's going to be JSON. You could set, there's a bunch of things you can set. You should research jQuery.ajax if you want to learn more. You could set an error. To handle the error, that'll accept about 3 parameters or so. And then we'll do success. And that's all we're going to do for this case. And that's going to accept the results. Okay, so within success, we've grabbed this JSON feed, and success results now is equal to a big object probably. So let's console log that and see what we end up with. Okay, we have a quick mistake missing, ending curly brace on line 66. Yep, that does not need to be there. And lastly, update panel.init is not defined. So this is something you want to be careful about. Notice we have the self-invoking anonymous function. And the reason you can do that, or the reason that's helpful, is because it limits the number of global variables and methods that you have and functions. But the problem is update panel is no longer available to you outside of this function. So the answer is either copy this code and place it within that function or expose it to the window object. And that's what we'll do. Window.updatePanel equals update panel. That way we have access to it. Okay, so we run it and we do get one mistake here, and it's saying it can't get that. And I bet update box, there's another mistake. So first, let's fix that. Let's grab that one, change it. And the next one, there it is, data type. Got to be careful, needs to be uppercase. Okay, and now this is what we get in return. So you see, we have the object, and then as a property, we have another object of results, and then we have a huge string of them. So we need to use a for statement or jQuery.h to filter through all of these. And then ultimately, we want to grab the text right there. So let's do that right now. Let's get rid of that. And within success, now we could just continuously update the DOM, but that's slow, it causes a bunch of reflows. We don't want to do that. So we're just going to update a fragment or a variable or something like that. We'll call it the tweets. So we have a couple options here. You could make it an array, and you could update the array and then use .join at the end. You could use a string where you just keep doing concatenation, or you could do document fragments. So the hard thing is that depending on the browser, some things are faster than others. So in some browsers, just using a big string is faster. In other browsers, using an array and array.join is going to be faster. I'm thinking for the type of people that love Justin Bieber, I'm thinking the browsers that do best with string concatenation will be fastest. But truthfully, it doesn't matter. So next we need to call element.empty. And remember, elem refers to, and we got to make sure they pass that in, don't they? The elem is going to refer to what they're referencing. So in this case, it'll be tweets. Right there. Now, if we did not empty it every single time, each time we added 3 more, there would be 3 tweets, then there would be 6, then 9, then 12. So we want to make sure we have a clean slate every single time. So let's go ahead and empty that. And next, let's do our each statement to filter through those. So we know we can access it by doing results dot, and it was called results again. You see right here. Object results. So remember, I could call this response anything I want to. So they just happen to be called the same thing. No big deal. So for each results, run a function, and the jQuery will send 2 parameters, the index and the tweet. We'll call it the tweet, but that's actually an object. So what we'll do here is we'll say we need to set the number, because remember, this is going to return like 10 or 15 or so. So I need to make sure that I say if index is equal to if index is equal to update panel.options.the number. You can see right here, 3, and we also have that as the default. So if it's equal to 3, then we will just return false, something like that. Else, we will do the tweets, and then we'll update this little tweets variable. So the tweets plus equals a list item, and we'll paste it in. So tweet.text, and we get tweet.text because we now know that within here, each one of these, 0, 1, 2, 3, each of those are referenced by tweet. And then we just want to go tweet.text and just grab that string right there. There we go. So we update the tweet. So 3 times, it's going to add a new list item. And then finally, when we're done, and we want to make sure with our each statement, make sure we add that parentheses there. And then after that, let's just do elem.append the tweet. That's why we update the DOM in one single instance, one reflow instead of a bunch. Like so. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's save that and come back to Firefox and see if we made any other errors. And we did. Element is not defined. And of course it's not defined because we need to reference it. So we can do element, change that to this dot options dot element. like so. Alternatively, if you wanted, you could pass it to the updated function. That way you could only refer to it as element. It doesn't really matter. But we can't use this, so let's make sure we use update panel.options. Okay, and then finally we do this one more time. So what we should probably do is cache that, shouldn't we? We'll do that later. Update panel.options.element. There we go, and we have our 3 tweets. So if we do it correctly, every 5 seconds or so, this is going to update. And there we go, keeps updating. Very cool. So last thing I want to do here is I want to make, since we're referencing the element more than once, why don't we save it? A very, very small improvement. lm equals update panel.options.lm. That way, we can just refer to it like so. There we go. So let's close that out. And now the final thing we want to do here, well, actually, let's do a little bit of testing. Let's say they want to bring in 10. Let's try that out. Okay, now it's bringing in 10. If they only want 1, cool. So let's go back to 5 and say they want to update it every 2,000 seconds. Or I'm sorry, 2,000 milliseconds. 1, 2, update, 1, 2, update. There we go. Okay, so let's keep that back at 5,000 milliseconds. The last thing we want to do here is just have a little bit of fun, and we're going to hijack these tweets. So I'll show you what I mean. At the very end, we'll do something like hijack tweet, and this is an option they can set if they want to. If they set it to true, we're going to hijack these tweets and we're going to replace all references to Justin Bieber with, of course, Nettuts. So we need to do that up here. I'm going to set the default, though, just to be nice. Hijack tweet. It's going to be default. So we don't want to do it by default. So how can we do this? Off the top of my head, why don't we do it right up here? And we will say something like... if the update panel.options.hijack tweet is set to true, and it would only be set to true if the person requested it to be. In that case, we will do something like tweet.text, and we're going to overwrite that now, and we're going to say equals tweet.text.replace, and let me do a very sloppy regular expression. I want it to the I flag means it can be uppercase or lowercase, and G means keep going even after you find the first occurrence. And we'll do something like, so Justin, mostly we're looking for Bieber. So we could do Bieber. I think that's how you spell it. So right here we're wrapping this in parentheses because it could be Justin space, but the question mark designates that it's optional. So you can have it there, but it's not required. And then we follow that up with Bieber and do that. So we're going to replace any occurrence of that with Nettuts. Okay, I think that works. So let's try it out, see if I did it right. Yeah, Nettuts new doll. Nettuts blastin' never lets you go. I just took Nettuts as a newborn vampire. Have no idea what that means. Anyways, that's completely lame, but that's how you would do it. So now, like I said, you could turn this into a plugin if you want, but in those cases where it's really not necessary, if it's kind of a one-off thing, this is an easy way, and you can still take advantage of passing in objects to override and things like that. So let me know what you think, and if you'd like to improve upon it or expand it, definitely do so, and let me know what you come up with. For more tips and tutorials and news on Justin Bieber, be sure to visit net.tutsplus.com. Bye.